Imagine buying your dream home, only to discover that someone is already waiting inside the walls for your children to arrive. In the summer of 2014, Derek and Maria Broaddus purchased 657 Boulevard in the quiet, affluent suburb of Westfield, New Jersey. It was a pristine, 6-bedroom colonial revival worth $1.3 million. They planned to raise their 3 young children there. But before they could even unpack their first moving box, a plain white envelope arrived in the mailbox. Inside was a typed letter that would completely destroy their lives. The message read, "657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now. As it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out." The writer signed it simply, The Watcher. This was not an anonymous internet troll. It was the beginning of a documented psychological campaign targeted at a real American family, orchestrated by an unseen presence that seemed to know their every move. Westfield, New Jersey, sits just 20 miles outside of New York City. It is a picture-perfect suburb consistently ranked as one of the safest towns in the state. The tree-lined streets and historic properties are exactly what drew Derek and Maria to the area. They envisioned a peaceful upbringing for their kids. The evening the first letter arrived, Derek was at the house alone, doing light painting and renovations. Around 10 p.m., he walked down the driveway to check the mail. When he opened the thick envelope, the text immediately shifted from a vague history lesson to a deeply invasive threat. The Watcher was explicitly observing Derek's daily routines. The letter criticized him for hiring contractors, stating, "I see already that you have flooded 657 Boulevard with contractors so that you can destroy what was supposed to be. You have turned it into a contractor's dream, an unwise move. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy." Panic set in instantly. Derek realized that whoever wrote the letter wasn't just guessing, they were actively watching him from the shadows of the yard. He ran through the house, turning off every light to avoid being targeted through the windows, and dialed the Westfield Police Department. The responding officer read the text and left Derek with a chilling piece of advice: "Don't mention this to any of your new neighbors." For the next 2 weeks, Derek and Maria tried to convince themselves the letter was a cruel prank by a bitter bear who had lost the bidding war. They kept the threat a secret, trying to move forward. Then, the second letter arrived, and with it, any hope of a harmless joke completely vanished. The second letter proved that the Watcher was close enough to hear their spoken conversations and see their most intimate family dynamics. The writer addressed Derek and Maria directly by their last names, spelling them perfectly. But the most horrifying section was a direct message about their children. The Watcher had identified their 3 kids, listing them by their names and nicknames in order of birth. The letter asked, 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all of the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement? Or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs you would never hear them scream. The family was paralyzed. The writer even correctly identified the specific bedroom windows facing the street, asking who would be sleeping where, noting, "It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better." From that exact moment, Derek and Maria stopped bringing their children to the property. The renovations ground to a halt. The dream home they had spent their life savings on had transformed into a psychological prison before they had even spent a single night inside. The Westfield Police Department launched a formal investigation, but the case instantly stalled against a total lack of physical evidence. The letters had been processed through a distant mail sorting facility, leaving no local postmarks. There were no fingerprints, and a forensic sweep revealed no usable DNA on the paper or the envelopes. When investigators analyzed the language and typography, they discovered a telling clue. The writer used an older, traditional formatting style, consistently placing double spaces after every period. This quirk strongly suggested that the Watcher was an older individual, likely trained on a typewriter decades ago. Suspicion turned toward the immediate neighbors, specifically the residents of the house directly next door. The Langford family had lived on the block since the 1960s. The matriarch, Peggy Langford, was in her 90s, and several of her adult children still lived with her. One son, Michael Langford, was known to locals as an eccentric individual who often wandered near the property lines. Crucially, the side windows of the Langford home offered an unobstructed, perfect view straight into the Broaddus family's yard and master bedroom windows. The police brought Michael Langford in for questioning. He vehemently denied any knowledge of the letters. Without a shred of physical evidence linking him to the crime, the prosecutor's office refused to grant a search warrant for the Langford residence, leaving the police empty-handed. Frustrated by the lack of progress, Derek and Maria took matters into their own hands. They spent thousands of dollars hiring private investigators, former FBI profilers, and forensic linguists. They installed a high-tech camera system around the perimeter of 657 Boulevard. Yet, despite the surveillance, the letters kept appearing. They were never caught on camera being delivered. They simply arrived disguised among the daily stack of ordinary mail. By the end of 2014, the financial and emotional weight brought the Broaddus family to a breaking point. They refused to jeopardize their children's safety by moving into the house. Instead, they were forced to pay a massive monthly mortgage on a completely empty home while simultaneously paying rent for an apartment elsewhere. 6 months after the first envelope arrived, they made the agonizing decision to put 657 Boulevard back on the market. But by then, the story had leaked to the local media. The house was now famous, forever branded as the Watcher House. Prospective buyers vanished the moment they learned about the ongoing threats. Desperate to escape financial ruin, Derek and Maria proposed a deal to sell the lot to a developer who wanted to tear down the historic structure and build two modern homes in its place. However, the Westfield Planning Board rejected the proposal after a chaotic town meeting. The neighbors turned out in droves, fiercely protesting that splitting the lot would ruin the historic aesthetics of the neighborhood. That rejection marked a sinister shift in the local dynamic. The community warmth completely evaporated, and suspicion turned inward. Online forums and local whispers began accusing Derek and Maria of fabricating the entire story. A widespread conspiracy theory emerged claiming that the couple had suffered severe buyer's remorse, realized they couldn't actually afford the $1.3 million home, and had written the letters themselves as an elaborate hoax to legally break their contract. The psychological toll became unbearable. Not only were they being hunted by an anonymous stalker, but they were now being publicly vilified by the very town they had wanted to call home. The most definitive and chilling truth of the entire investigation emerged when detectives went back to question the previous owners of 657 Boulevard, John and Andrea Woods. The Woodses had lived in the house for 23 peaceful years, successfully raising their children there without a single issue. They insisted they had never felt watched or unsafe. But then, Andrea Woods remembered a small detail. Just a few days before they officially closed the sale and handed the keys to the Broaddus family, they had received a typed letter signed by the Watcher. It was strange and mildly unsettling, but because they were already packing up and leaving the state, they assumed it was just weird junk mail and threw it directly into the trash. They never thought to mention it during the closing meetings. This single piece of information changed everything. It meant that the stalker's malice wasn't born out of a personal vendetta against Derek and Maria. The Watcher's obsession was tied directly to the physical structure of 657 Boulevard itself. In the summer of 2019, after 5 long years of intense emotional torment, the Broaddus family finally found a buyer willing to take the property. They sold the home for $959,000, absorbing a devastating financial loss of over $400,000 just to rid themselves of the deed. A final letter had arrived shortly before the closing, mockingly telling them that the house had won, and warning that eyes would follow them wherever they went. Today, a new family occupies the rooms of 657 Boulevard. According to local real estate records and police sources, that family has never received a single letter. The house has gone completely quiet. The true identity of the Watcher remains officially unknown. The case files at the Westfield Police Department sit open, slowly gathering dust, unresolved. Was the culprit a neighbor hiding in plain sight, tracking the family through binoculars behind closed blinds? Was it a resentful local resident waging a quiet war against wealthy newcomers? Or was it someone with a much deeper, darker attachment to the property? The real terror of 657 Boulevard doesn't lie in the text of the letters. It lies in the terrifying realization that the people who occupy the center of our communities, the neighbors who smile, wave, and cut their lawns on Sunday mornings, can harbor a completely different face behind closed doors. We want to believe our homes are our ultimate sanctuaries. But sometimes, the greatest threat to your family isn't what's waiting in the dark outside, but the person standing in the daylight, watching you lock your front door from across the street.